Clara woke up in a bed made of silk with a diamond the size of a marble on her finger. She remembers going to sleep in her tiny studio apartment in Ohio. But now, she is in a penthouse overlooking Seoul, and the man standing by the window is Kang Han-jun, the billionaire the world calls the Ice King. He turns around and tells her she signed the marriage papers yesterday to save her father's life. Clara has no memory of the wedding, and Han-jun has a secret that makes him the most dangerous man in Korea. Subscribe to the channel right now, and watch until the very end, because the truth about why she lost her memory will leave you speechless. Clara tried to stand up, but her head spun. The room was huge, cold, and smelled like expensive sandalwood. Kang Han-jun didn't smile. He wore a black suit that looked like armor. He tossed a legal document onto the bed. It showed her signature next to his. He told her that her father had gambled away money that belonged to Han-jun's company. The marriage was the only way to stop the police from taking her father away. She looked at the ring on her finger. It felt heavy and wrong. Han-jun told her the rules were simple. She had to attend every gala at his side. She had to look happy in front of the cameras. But in private, they were strangers. He told her he didn't believe in love, and he didn't want a real wife. He just needed a respectable image to take over his father's chair at the company. Clara walked to the window. Seoul was a sea of neon lights. She felt like a bird in a cage made of gold. She asked if she could call her father. Han-jun said no. He said her old life was gone. He had paid off her debts and bought her a new identity. To the world, she was a high society woman from an elite American family. He warned her that if she tried to run, her father would be back in a jail cell within the hour. The first dinner was silent. The table was 20 feet long. Han-jun ate with perfect manners, never looking up from his plate. Clara couldn't eat a single bite. She watched the way the servants whispered when they looked at her. They looked scared. She realized Han-jun wasn't just rich. People were terrified of his temper. He had a reputation for destroying anyone who got in his way. That night, she found a locked door at the end of the hallway. She heard Han-jun talking to someone inside. He sounded angry. He was talking about a debt that couldn't be paid with money. Clara realized her father's gambling wasn't the whole story. There was a reason Han-jun picked her, a girl from a small town in Ohio, out of all the women in the world. She decided she had to find out what it was. The next morning, a stylist arrived with racks of clothes. Clara was forced to dress in a gown that cost more than her college tuition. Han-jun walked in and looked her over. For a split second, his eyes softened, but then they turned back to ice. He told her she looked acceptable. He took her hand to lead her to the car. His touch felt like electricity, even though she wanted to hate him. They arrived at a massive corporate gala. Hundreds of photographers flashed their lights. Han-jun pulled her close, his arm around her waist. He whispered in her ear, telling her to smile or else. Clara looked into the cameras and gave a fake smile. She felt like an actress in a movie. But then, a man in the crowd caught her eye. He looked exactly like a brother she thought had died years ago. The man disappeared into the crowd before Clara could move. Han-jun's grip on her waist tightened. He noticed she was shaking. He didn't ask if she was okay. He just told her to keep walking. They spent the night meeting powerful people who bowed to Han-jun. Clara realized he owned half the city. But every time she looked at him, she saw a man who was deeply lonely behind his wall of money. Back at the penthouse, Clara confronted him. She told him she saw someone who looked like her brother. Han-jun's face turned pale for a second. He told her she was imagining things. He told her her brother was dead, and she needed to focus on her new reality. He left the room and locked the door from the outside. Clara realized she wasn't just his wife. She was his prisoner. She found a hidden air vent in the closet. She used a butter knife to open it and crawled through. She ended up in Han-jun's private office. On his desk was a file with her name on it. Inside were photos of her from years ago, photos she didn't know existed. There was also a photo of her brother. Underneath it, someone had written the word collateral. Clara felt a chill run down her spine. She heard Han-jun coming back. She scrambled out of the office and back to her room just in time. She realized Hanjun hadn't saved her father out of kindness. He was using her to get to her brother. Her brother wasn't dead. He was hiding, and Hanjun was using Clara as bait to draw him out. Everything about her marriage was a lie designed to trap a man she loved. The next day, Hanjun took her to a private garden. He seemed different. He talked about his mother, who had been treated poorly by his father. He told Clara that he never wanted to be like his father. For a moment, she saw the human being inside the monster. He gave her a small locket. Inside was a picture of a house in the woods. He said it was the only place he ever felt safe. Despite the danger, Clara started to feel a strange pull toward him. He was a man who had been taught that power was the only thing that mattered. When he touched her hand, it wasn't cold anymore. She saw him help a wounded bird in the garden when he thought no one was looking. She started to wonder if he was being forced into this plan just as much as she was. Her brother sent her a secret message through a delivery driver. It said, "Don't trust the locket." Clara looked at the locket Hanjun gave her. She realized there was a tiny tracking device inside. Hanjun wasn't giving her a gift. He was using her to find her brother's location. She felt her heart break. She had started to care for him, but he was still just using her as a tool. Clara decided to play a game of her own. She acted like she loved the locket. She wore it every day, but at night, she left it on the nightstand and went to the office to gather more information. She found out that Hanjun's father was the real villain. The old man was the one who wanted her brother dead because her brother had proof of the company's crimes. Hanjun was caught in the middle. She followed Hanjun to a secret meeting in the basement of the building. She saw him talking to a group of men in masks. He told them he wouldn't hurt the girl. He told them he would find another way. One of the men pulled a gun on Hanjun. He told him that if he didn't deliver the brother, the girl would die instead. Hanjun didn't flinch. He told them to stay away from her. Clara realized Hanjun was trying to protect her while pretending to hunt her brother. He was playing a dangerous double game. She felt a wave of guilt for doubting him. She stepped out from the shadows and looked at him. The men in masks fled. Hanjun looked at her with pure terror in his eyes. He told her she should have stayed in the room. He told her he couldn't protect her anymore if the secret was out. They sat on the floor of the cold basement. Hanjun told her the truth. Her brother had stolen data that could destroy the Kong Empire. His father wanted her brother eliminated. Hanjun had married her to keep her under his roof, where he could keep his father's assassins away from her. The marriage was a shield, not a trap. He looked at her and touched her face. He said he was sorry for everything. That night, they didn't sleep in separate rooms. Hanjun sat by the door of her bedroom with a weapon in his hand, guarding her. Clara sat on the bed and watched him. She realized he was willing to die for her. She asked him why. He looked at her and said that from the moment he saw her photo, he knew he couldn't let his father hurt her. He had fallen in love with a girl he had never met. The tension in the house grew. Hanjun's father called a family meeting. He was a cruel old man who walked with a cane. He looked at Clara and told her she was a beautiful investment. He told Hanjun that the deadline was tomorrow. Either the brother appeared, or Clara would have a tragic accident. Hanjun gripped his father's arm and told him to never speak her name again. Clara made a choice. She contacted her brother using a secret code they used as kids. She told him to meet her at the house in the woods, the one from the locket. She knew Hanjun's father was listening. She was going to lead the villains into a trap, but she didn't tell Hanjun. She wanted to save him the way he had been trying to save her. She left a note on the pillow and vanished into the night. Hour 4. The house in the woods. Clara reached the cabin in the woods. It was dark and quiet. She waited on the porch. Soon, black SUVs pulled up. Men with guns got out. They thought they were going to find her brother. Instead, they found Clara holding a laptop. She told them she had already uploaded the data to the internet. She told them if anything happened to her or her brother, the whole world would see the Kong family's crimes. Hanjun arrived a few minutes later. He looked frantic. He ran to Clara and pulled her behind him. He looked at the men and told them it was over. But then, a voice came from the shadows. It was her brother. He wasn't hiding. He was working with Hanjun's father. He had sold out Clara to get a piece of the billionaire's fortune. Clara couldn't believe it. Her own blood had betrayed her for money. Her brother laughed. He told Clara she was always too trusting. He told Hanjun to step aside so he could collect his payment. But Hanjun didn't move. He told the brother that the laptop Clara was holding was a decoy. The real data was already in the hands of the authorities. Hanjun had spent the last year building a case against his own father and the brother. He was ending the empire to save the girl. The police sirens echoed through the trees. The men in suits tried to run, but they were surrounded. Clara's brother was handcuffed. He screamed at her, calling her a traitor. Clara stood there, cold and empty. She had lost her family, but she looked at Hanjun. He was bleeding from a cut on his forehead, but he was looking at her like she was the only thing that mattered in the world. They were taken to a safe house. The Kong Empire collapsed overnight. Hanjun's father was arrested for 100 different crimes. Hanjun lost his billions, his penthouse, and his power. He sat on a plastic chair in a small apartment, looking at his hands. He told Clara she was free now. The marriage papers were destroyed. She could go back to Ohio and forget he ever existed. Clara looked at the small room. It wasn't a palace, but it didn't feel like a cage. She took off the diamond ring and put it on the table. She told Hanjun she didn't want the billionaire. She wanted the man who sat by her door all night to keep her safe. She told him she wasn't going anywhere. For the first time since they met, Hanjun cried. He leaned his head against her shoulder and let go of the ice. They spent the next few months living a quiet life. Hanjun got a job as a consultant, and Clara finished her degree. They were happy. But one day, Clara found a letter in the mail. It had no return address. Inside was a single wedding photo. It was a photo of her and Hanjun, but they weren't in Seoul. They were in Ohio, 3 years ago. Clara's memory started to rush back, and the truth was darker than she imagined. Clara stared at the photo. She remembered the small church. She remembered Hanjun looking at her with a smile that was real. She realized she hadn't been kidnapped or forced into a marriage to save her father. She had met Hanjun years ago when he was traveling. They had fallen in love and married in secret. The billionaire life was something they were both trying to escape together. The memory of the accident hit her. They had been in a car crash. Hanjun had survived, but Clara had lost her memory. Hanjun had spent the last year pretending he was a cold stranger because the doctors said a sudden shock would hurt her brain. He had played the role of the Ice King to protect her from his father, while waiting for her to fall in love with him all over again. She ran to find Hanjun. He was at the park, sitting on a bench. She showed him the photo. He looked at it, and his eyes filled with tears. He apologized for lying. He said he wanted her to choose him for who he was, not because of a past she couldn't remember. He had been living in pain every day, pretending he didn't know her favorite food or the way she liked her coffee. Clara realized that every cold thing he did was a sacrifice. He had rebuilt his entire life just to give her a chance to heal. He had let her hate him so she could stay safe. She hugged him and told him she remembered the house in the woods wasn't a hiding spot. It was where they had planned to build their future together before the crash. They were finally back where they started. But there was one final problem. Hanjun's father had left a hidden debt that wasn't about money. He had signed a contract with a dangerous group that claimed ownership of Hanjun's firstborn child. It was a dark, old-world pact. Clara looked at Hanjun and realized why he had been so afraid of being a real husband. He was terrified that if they had a family, the nightmare would start all over again. They decided to leave the country forever. They changed their names and moved to a place where no one knew the name Kong. They lived a simple life, away from the neon lights and the blood money. They had a daughter, and they named her after the flower that grows in the snow. They never told her about the billionaire or the fear. They only told her about the man who was brave enough to be a stranger to the woman he loved. As the sun set over their new home, Clara looked at her husband. He wasn't the most feared man in Seoul anymore. He was just a man. She realized that her life hadn't changed because she married a billionaire. It changed because she found someone who loved her more than his own life. They sat on the porch, holding hands, finally at peace. The cage was gone, and the birds were finally flying free. I hope you loved this emotional journey.